The Animation Podcast, April 30th, 2005.
Hey everybody, this is Clay. Welcome to show number 1 of the Animation Podcast. First, I want to thank you for coming by and checking out the show, and I think if you're an animation fan, you'll be glad you did. Now, I don't want to talk too much up front about the show because I want to get to the guest, but I do want to say that the main inspiration for this show is the fact that so much of what I know about animation comes from reading handouts and lecture notes and interviews of great animators of the past. And it's always a rush for me when I see some new clip of video or someone has an audio file that, really gives you insight into who they were and what it was like when they were creating such amazing work. So my big idea here is to get together with the amazing talent working in animation today and let them tell us in their own words who they are and what they think about animation. So I'll cover some more details about the podcast after the interview, but for now, let's just get on with the show. I couldn't be more excited about my first guest. His 25-year animation career has brought life to so many classic characters, including Scar, Jafar, Hercules, Gaston, Lilo, and even Mickey Mouse. He has built a legendary collection of animation art that rivals any that I know of, and he's a walking encyclopedia of all things Nine Old Men. It's hard to find a more passionate proponent for the art form of animation, and I'm honored to present part 1 of my interview with Andreas Déja. Well, the first thing, could you just pronounce your name? Because I've heard your name said probably 5 different ways, and I don't know if any of them are right.
Well, it's interesting because when I came here, it was Déja. Andreas Déja, because that's what we say in Germany. That's what I grew up with.
So it's a German name?
It's no. It's a French word. It means already. So it's actually a word. But me being born in Poland, so it's all a little bit complicated. I think that word or the name came from the fact that there was a movement in the Middle Ages by some French farmers that moved to Poland. The Huguenots, and so I think I'm a Huguenot. But when I came to this country, people can't really say Déja, or this is a strange word to say. So then the Spanish people say, "Is it Déja?" And I say, "Why don't we say Déja? Because it is a French word like déjà vu." So anyway, it's Déja.
Okay, great. And Andreas, right?
Yeah,
obviously. Well, that's good to know. So I guess the first question I was curious about was art big in your life when you were growing up? Was your family artistic, or did it just kind of come from you?
Not really. My family was sort of a workers' family, like middle class, maybe even a little lower middle class. And no, they were not really into art, whether music or painting. Their tastes were very middle range. I mean, they in Germany people like to have these oil paintings of a stag in the German Alps. That kind of cliche, and they like that kind of stuff. And music wise, they just listen to Umpapa music. I hate to say, no classical music, nothing. So my introduction to art really came through comic strips, really way back when I was a kid.
Yeah,
and. I remember a friend of mine gave me about like 5 or 6. I was still in kindergarten, and my parents didn't buy me any comic strips because that was just not good stuff, read a good book, basically. But I was immediately fascinated with the images, and the stories and all of that, especially Disney comics.
Had you seen animation at that time? Or
No. Maybe a few clips. No, we didn't even have a TV way back when I was 5. We had it later, when I was 7 or 8. Or maybe even 9. We had it way late. And it was a black and white TV, and I remember they had the Wonderful World of Disney in German, Walt speaking German, which is pretty funny. Guten Abend. And just remember those clips from Mickey Mouse shorts. Those I remember very vividly. Mm-hmm. And just the roundness of Mickey Mouse, and just how insanely appealing that was, and how as a kid I just couldn't take my eyes off this. So that was the first contact, and I think that's probably how it started.
Uh-huh. And I've heard you say that I think Jungle Book was the first film you went to?
Yeah, then a few years later, because again, my parents didn't take us kids, I have 2 sisters, didn't take us to the movies. It just wasn't that kind of thing. And so I had a little pocket money. And it came out, let's see, in 67, it's kind of 68. So I was 11 years old when Jungle Book came out in Germany. And yeah, that was my first feature and changed my life forever.
Yeah, and what was it about it?
From one day to the next, it's really weird. It was, I'd seen some clips, on TV. This movie's coming up, new Walt Disney movie, and of course, then I had to see it. And I took a friend, and we had to take a train because it was playing in a town, because we lived in this sort of small village almost. And it's hard to explain. It was like kind of the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your whole life, you know. So how can that not change you?
Right.
And then I remember I wanted to see it over and over again, and my mom got really concerned, and she said, "No, dear, you just saw it yesterday." I said, "Can I have 2 more marks? I want to see the movie again." And I just wouldn't get tired of it.
Did you, at the time when you saw it, did you realize that you wanted to be an animator, or was it just something that just totally captured your imagination? And
no, I actually wanted to do this.
Oh, you saw that and
because
said,
I'd always
what
drawn.
I want to do.
I'd drawn since kindergarten. Ever since I can remember, actually, I drew always something.
And did you realize that there was this job to draw cartoons, or did you kind of see the movie and put the two together and realize this is where I'm going?
Yeah, I'd read some articles about animation in magazines and newspapers about that there are artists called animators who make these drawings move. So I knew that, and I knew Walt Disney was in Los Angeles. I knew that too. It took me about another year to write a letter with the help of my English teacher, because my English wasn't really there. So I sent this letter with basic questions, how do I train myself to become a Disney animator, what sort of schooling, and so they wrote me back a few weeks later. And
that's good.
No, that was, can you imagine, because you have to see, when you live over there in Europe, it's so far away, especially in those days. Now everything is a lot closer. But way back, America seemed to be so abstract and so far away, and all of a sudden you have a letter with the Mickey logo, Walt Disney Productions. That was a treasure, just the envelope.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable, because it was all of a sudden real.
Yeah, I used to I call the studio and hang up. I just call and wait for them to answer, then I hang the phone up. I was freaked out. But yeah, I can imagine just getting the letter, and
it just becomes real, because this place sent it to you,
right.
And sure enough, they answered all my questions. It was just a form letter. But they answered all those questions, and I remember the major one saying, don't send us any copies of our cartoon characters, because you can learn those later, So you have to become an artist first, and observe, and do life drawing, spend time at the zoo, all of those things. And it didn't really make sense right away. But then once I saw more features, like Bambi was being reissued, then I remembered those things that they said in the letter about being an artist and knowing anatomy. I was like getting it all of a sudden. Just seeing Bambi being animated, I thought, you have to know where the ribcage is, and the knee and the heel. Of course. And it clicked, and then you couldn't stop me. Then I was at the zoo all the time. And I think I started life drawing when I was 15, which seemed a little early, especially to my parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was funny because...
Was it like nude figure drawing?
Yeah, it was. And I brought the first drawings home. They wanted to see what I did. And there's these nude women, on paper. And my dad, I remember, said, so how do you do this? Did you guys have photographs? And you work from photographs? And I said, no, we had somebody... And they were shocked. Again, my parents don't know anything about art.
Right.
Bless them. But I had to explain, and I had to think about that for a while. It seemed kind of weird, but then they were fine with it, and so I just moved on. And
so did you have a plan, like I'm going to go to school here, and then I'm going to end up at Disney, or did you just realize that I'm just going to spend all this time becoming a better artist and see where it takes me?
No, it was pretty much geared toward Disney.
Yeah. Even
at that young age, I thought, what you're going to do is you're going to try. You're really going to try to make it happen. But it probably won't work, because Disney is on such a high level. This is who they are, come on, don't kid yourself. But somehow you had this sort of, passion or instinct where you want to give it your best shot anyway. So work all those years. But, also, it was really fun. It wasn't just like, I have to do this portfolio, I have to go to the zoo. I loved that. And loved seeing yourself getting better. Later on, I bought some Super 8 clips from Disney movies, and they had a little screener, and I could study things frame by frame, and that opened up a whole new world of studying.
Yeah.
It was exciting. I loved doing all that, because I thought all this might lead to a job at Disney.
Right.
Maybe.
Right. And at any point there, did you actually try animation, or were you just strictly drawing?
No, I did. I did. And, stupid. It was, I did cell painting and backgrounds.
The whole thing.
That stuff doesn't really matter, of course. You can just use pencil and paper and do pencil tests.
Right.
To really learn it.
As a kid, you think you have to do the whole package. And
I was going to do a story at the zoo, like an animated short, and because I had spent so much time in zoos. And I remember I did a couple scenes about a guy who was feeding a fish to the seals. I remember painting all the cells of the fish flying across, and then I had a camel that was going to walk, screen left. And I got so confused what's supposed to happen with the legs. And I think that was not more than 1 second, but I shot it.
Right.
And even though it was horrible, but I thought it was kind of wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
It was your first stuff ever, and it does move awkwardly,
Yeah,
but
to see something you made
there
move.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later on, I think I was about 18, I took a trip to London because I had heard of Richard Williams Studios and them doing these commercials, these animated commercials. So once I got there, they showed me some pencil tests of these commercials. And then it became all clear that's where the stuff is. This is really all you need, is just doing pencil tests. So then I went back home and did pencil tests and shot them on my Super 8.
Did you actually go to school for animation or an art college or something like that?
What it was, I had met Hans Bacher, famous art director, color designer extraordinaire.
German, right?
Yeah, German. I met him when I was about 16. And because in my life drawing class, which was part of an art school, they said, or the art teacher there said, you're so crazy about Disney. And he was just rolling his eyes. He did not like Disney at all. But he says, I just had a student graduating from our program, and he's also mad about animation. And you should really hook up with him. And he felt kind of sorry for both of us, And so he gave me Hans's phone number, and we hooked up and became friends. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to go to the same school that you went to then.
Mm-hmm.
But he did warn me. He said there's no animation course, but they really focus on life drawing, illustration. And I said, well, that's what the studio at Disney just told me, to focus on drawing. So I went there for 4 years. But in terms of animation study, that was all self-taught, again with Super 8 movies and reading everything you can about Disney and learning the Disney style even. And
I'm sure back then it was a lot harder to find information, especially in Europe.
There was nothing. There was one book, Die Kunst des Zeichenfilms, The Art of Animation, which was out of print because it came out in 1960. Mm-hmm. And I had to go to this one library and keep rechecking it out. But there was nothing, the occasional newspaper article, Wow. So, but if you're motivated, it actually makes you look for things and search things, and there's something to be said about that, because I didn't have anything. I didn't have money, nothing. But I had an enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm. And were you still contacting the studio or anyone at the studio, or were you just kind of like plotting and planning and setting up your thing? And
basically, yeah. I really totally focused on learning how to draw. And I had a pretty good eye of what was a good drawing and a bad drawing, I think. And I immediately tuned into these Milt Kahl scenes. I didn't even know that there was a guy called Milt Kahl who sort of keyed all these Disney movies, but I loved his scenes because they looked so beautiful and different. And I thought, man, that's the drawing level. Holy moly. And again, just sort of stayed focused on drawing. Then I got in touch with Disney again when I was like 3/4 through my art studies, so maybe 3 years of art school, because I bought a book in an international bookstore in Cologne on the making of Raggedy Ann and Andy, written by John Kaymaker.
Oh, okay.
And I thought it was a fascinating book about the making of an animated film, lots of sketches and drawings in it. And toward the end, there was a chapter on Disney Studios now, like in the mid-70s, basically, and mid-late 70s. And they had a picture of Frank and Ollie and Eric Larson, and again, it just became real again.
Right.
And they talked about, in this book, John Kaymaker talked about the training program that Eric Larson was heading up at the studio. And I thought, a training program, this I got to find out about. So I wrote a letter to Eric Larson, Walt Disney Studios. I just asked him, is there any material, any brochures, anything that might help me? And he basically said, well, we don't really have anything. We work with people here at the studio on the spot and teach them here the art of animation. But he did send me this brochure called Disney is Looking for Some Colorful New Characters. And it was this very beautiful fold-out thing, talking about phases of animation, layout artists, animators, cleanup, So that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
That he sent that to me, and I got re-energized again. And Eric offered more help if I had any more questions. He was really nice.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean,
yeah, this kid from Germany didn't even know my art yet, or how I drew, or anything. Mm-hmm. So, but I did eventually, I think after the third letter, I thought I should send Eric some of my drawings just to see what he thinks, even though it would be a very scary thought. And I got some life drawings together, some cartoon work, animal drawings, copied them and just sent them off. And just it was just waiting nervously, for an answer. And then he wrote back, he was very impressed with my work and the analysis in it of action and mood, and talked about a few other things. And the last sentence was, animation is a very rewarding art form, and I think you've got what it takes. And I just about died.
Yeah, it gives me chills,
I
just
died.
yeah.
And then Eric also announced that he was going to be in Germany for a day with his girlfriend Hazel, because his wife had passed away, and I remember his girlfriend Hazel. And he was going to be in Hamburg, and I had talked about Hans, my friend Hans, who's also into animation, and he offered for us to see him in Hamburg and visit him. And so it's a long trip from Dienstlaken, where we live, this small town, to Hamburg. It's about a 7-hour drive. Mm-hmm. But we didn't care.
Yeah.
So Hans's wife drove us up there, and we met with him. And once Eric found out that we drove 7 hours to meet him, he was embarrassed. He said, "Oh, I wouldn't even have asked you to come. I thought you guys just live half an hour." He thought, I don't know if he thought that Germany was a small country.
Right.
He felt so embarrassed. We said, no, it's okay. And then the other problem was that our English was pretty bad, and we understood about 50% of what Eric was saying. And Eric had a way of kind of talking with closed lips, So I was just staring at his lips, trying to make out what he was just saying, and I was getting angry at myself, because I probably just missed this great information that he might have. But I stayed in touch with Eric, and he, eventually he got me in. I thought then I had heard about CalArts, and I thought maybe I should go to CalArts after my studies, and had no idea how much it would cost anyway. I would never have been able to afford that at the time. And Eric said, no, he said, your drawing ability is already better than most applicants, so you should come to the studio straight away. And I did.
Wow.
I graduated at my art school in July of 1980. I think it was June. And I started at Disney in August.
Wow.
So I didn't miss a beat.